And people say we have a very high emotional intelligence before they know how to coin it. I just know how to read energy. Something's not working here.
You know, and I love that you said that, because, you know, when you go into conversations with people and you know something's off, often it's not the conversation that informs you something's off.
It's nonverbal cues.
And we forget to think about the nonverbal cues of people with trauma.
What does optimal brain health mean to you?
What a great question. Understanding what you've got and getting the best out of it.
Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Women Effect Show presented by WINJECT Studios. I'm your host, Chris Ross. If you don't know me, and if you do know me, you know things are about to pop off. If you're watching a video component of this, I have another beautiful human, Dr. Ruth ALLAN, one of my personal friends, host of the Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain show presented by WINJECT, and just a really dope individual. I'm really excited. I was just on her show for, I think it was the second time now, right? Second time?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Anyways, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. So excited. I can already feel my cheeks raising and my muscles are going to be all really tight by the end of it.
Yeah, we always have a good time, don't we? Always have a good time.
We do.
You know, for people out there that maybe don't know much of you, and I know that obviously we're tapping into a lot of audiences and especially the reach with WINJECT. I'm really excited about, you know, now that I wouldn't say the world taking it by storm. It's just kind of like showing people what we're doing here exactly, and presenting shows and empowering them with a platform that they are able to reach their fans in different types of ways and reaching a different types of audience. For those who maybe potentially don't know the great Dr. Ruth, how would you like to introduce yourself to the world?
So I really help people take back control of their well-being, but through the lens of brain health. So I help business leaders, entrepreneurs and family leaders do that for themselves and for their family, so that they can really truly win back energy and time doing what they love with the people that they love. But we approach that whole piece of achieving that next level of performance and potential, but different to other way coaches approach this. We go through the lens of brain health.
And I like that too, because I know obviously me being immersed into all of this, your systems and what you're promoting and what you're building. You've been doing a lot of revamp stuff. It's the new Dr. Ruth that I'm seeing with a lot of the content and a lot of things you're doing with your site.
Yeah. So we building out the Wellbeing Warrior Academy, which is really focused around children and teenagers and families, really learning how they can take charge of their well-being and developing the programs around that. So we have the Wellbeing Warrior Academy Junior Belt program, which is taken very simple view, and that's aimed for children who are at age 7 to 11, to really help them learn what brain health is and how they can become well-being warriors for themselves and also obviously for the family as well. And that's done in conjunction with the adults or the carers of the family, and that's translatable out to schools as well.
Gotcha.
And then we have Brain Thrive by 25, which is focused on teenagers learning about their brains. That's more detailed explanation of brain health and what that means in the context of their life's journey as teenagers up to the age of 25, which is where your brain fully matures. And then we have programs focused around all ages to look at how people can optimize their brain health. So this is doing a deep dive into your brain, how your brain works, how it operates, and we do that through detailed brain health evaluations. And then on the back of that, within the academy, we have programs associated with memory rescue, mood rescue, and also
I'm going to need that for a couple of people that I come in contact with.
Yeah, and then we have Brain Fit for Work and Life, which is more focused around businesses and organizations so that they can incorporate cognitive performance into the workplace. We talk a lot about neurodiversity and we talk about well-being as like it's a separate entity, but actually it all falls under the big banner of brain health, because we all have unique brains. So it's looking at how can we approach performance in the context of optimal brain performance.
That actually leads me to the question that I wanted to ask you. Obviously, you have your show Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain, and you have your guests come on, and you have pretty much an opening question somewhere in the beginning where you ask, what does optimal brain health mean to you? And I came onto your show, and I thought I was going to make it. I literally came out of nowhere for me. I was like, where did this? I felt like I was getting set up because we came on talking about grief and trauma, because obviously with the current state of the country, and obviously out here in the UK, of the Queen, Your Majesty, passing. I think she just was buried. I think it was Monday this week, wasn't it? Monday.
Yeah, it was her funeral. Yeah.
We went to the funeral. We were talking about grief and trauma, and she came out of nowhere and hit me with the question. It caught me off guard, but I enjoyed it. But what does optimal brain health mean to you, Dr. Ruth?
What a great question. So I think for me, it's about knowing how your brain functions, knowing you at a deep level in terms of your brain function and performance, and then getting the best out of it in whatever way you want that to be. So I spent time fighting my brain or not really leveraging its power before I understood really truly how it worked. So I have a very, very active brain. I have a very fast processor called the cerebellum, and I have a overactive basal ganglia, which are my anxiety centers. And those two things combined with a little bit of overactivity in my anterior cingulate gyrus makes for a person that thinks too fast for many other people. So I'm go at 100 miles an hour and many people can't keep up, which is frustrating for both parties. I get super anxious, and so I have anxiety traits associated with my anxiety, so I need to learn how to calm that down. And then I also have a my way or the highway approach to life,
no, you don't say.
which doesn't always serve me. So historically, I not understanding my brain function, that brain type has worked against me in many cases. And what, like many people, I have childhood trauma that chuck that in as well. And there's loads of things that I've done that I deeply regret in my life. And so I know now why I did stupid things, because I didn't truly understand why my brain was behaving the way it was. But optimal brain health for me is understanding what you've got, and getting the best out of it.
I love the answer. You probably didn't know I was going to ask you that question, did you?
No.
But I had it in my mind. I was thinking about it earlier today. I was like, I'm going to hit it with the same question. I love what you said about understanding the brain that you obviously dealt with, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And having an understanding of certain things that light up in your brain, and knowing what you need to do to combat that, right?
Yeah.
And what you need to fuel it. Yes, 100%. And I really love that answer, because it's true. I mean, when you just raising your awareness and understanding how you operate, what makes you tick, why you tick this way, I'm not to obviously project this into a conversation, but me suffering from reactive abuse has taught me a lot of things, and how much that I wouldn't say ignore, but I would minimize of what was happening around me until they put me in pressure situation where I couldn't take anything else, and then end up spouting off of the mouth or whatever, right? When you're applied that much pressure. But if you understand how your brain works, and you can kind of figure out, how do I go about making sure that doesn't happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get it. Because like for me, like my anterior cingulate gyrus, which is the central bit in my brain, it works a bit too hard. And so I often get stuck on thoughts, and it is literally my way or the highway sometimes. and my husband knows that. So it's like happy
Oh, poor
wife,
Dave.
happy life.
Poor Dave.
But I know, like this morning I had some meetings for a project I'm working on, and getting really angry. I could like feel that anger and tension welling up inside me, and just being ready to kick off with
Yeah, I mean, because we're all human, I mean, whatever's gonna pretty much light you on fire is gonna light you on fire. And it's like everyone has pet peeves, but it's funny that you say that your brain processes information faster, so you're more of an active thinker. And I think that's why you and I get along so well. It's because my brain, I can't turn that off.
Yeah,
and it's really frustrating when someone else isn't understanding. We just did it to each other. Perfect example. Two fast thinkers on the same call, and you're going to get this because the conversation go anywhere.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But also, for me, and I had this for much of my, my earlier career, is I didn't know to down-regulate the speed that I was thinking and talking. So sometimes my talking can't keep up with my thinking, and I'm sure people can relate to this. And my husband will try and have a conversation with me, or some people have a conversation with me, and I haven't slowed down my thinking to speak clearly. So I come up with sentences that are just not constructed because I haven't had time to construct them in a slow way and articulate my thoughts. And I know many years ago I was working on a project, and one of the pet peeves of the person I was working with is he said, you are going too fast. Ian Berry, I'll mention his name, is like, you are going too fast. You need to slow down. I can't keep up with you, and many people can't keep up with you. And so I have to take people on a journey to get to where I'm at.
It's exhausting.
And it's really it can be really frustrating for both parties because one person is like being, it's on receive, and the other person is like, oh my God.
That's what it sounds like when they talk. But to me,
treacle.
My mom used to say this, and I think I may or may not have told you this story, but my mom tells a story just randomly to people, right? That my son, when he was born, and as soon as he learned how to walk, he ran. And I have one speed, and it's go. I just don't, right, my feet hit the ground, I'm gone. And I don't know what it is about something. If I feel like I'm not active or I have anything going on, it's where I get in trouble.
Yeah.
You got to give me something to do.
Yeah, I'm the same.
It's like, you're going to give me something to do.
Yeah, I find it really difficult to, sit down on the sofa and watch television, and I have to consciously do it to try and calm myself down and wind down. But it's like I'm on a coiled spring. So if you give me the opportunity to run around and do stuff, I mean, I could probably work, and I would be completely dysfunctional, but I could work 24/7 if my brain would allow me to, from a replenishment perspective. But I know I can't do that, and I know I burn out. And it's really hard for me to pause and slow down and stop and go, okay, now it's now me time, chill out time, or even spend time with the other half time, because I just struggle to take that, to slow down and stop. So
this is powerful. Okay, I'm gonna pick your brain on this because it sounds like we're the same person. What are some of your barriers, or what are some of the things you must do and have to ensure that you are able to slow down and kind of recharge or recycle? Maybe with spouses, it could be just with anything, even with your child, Lily, right? So when you're making sure you're touching all the things that you have to do, because it's non-negotiable, right? You have to spend that time, quality time, if you want to have a great relationship. You want to have a great relationship with your mom. You want to have a great relationship with, I don't know, someone down the street named Sally. You have to be able to invest that time. But what I've always found is where I feel like when I'm not able to recycle energy, or I'm getting reciprocated of my level of, I guess, effort, then I shut off
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. You just don't like,
So what does that look like?
It back, you just disconnect from it because it's not fueling you.
Right.
So yeah, I totally get that. And I think, you know, it's the same, that's a similar situation for everyone. If you're not having that, if you're not receiving that emotional energy that drives you, and you know, we talk about like, it's our responsibility to generate happiness. It's our responsibility to, and absolutely it is. But ultimately, we're connected human beings. We're a system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you and I are interacting, and we're going to bounce energy off of each other. And if you surround yourself with people who don't give you that level of energy that's going to motivate you and fill your bucket up, but they're just draining it all the time.
That's what it feels like. I feel like I'm even in a conversation, I can feel myself trying to protect myself as much as possible and not taking on that negative charge. I'm not a negative individual. I've never have been, but you can get there if you're around a lot of negative people.
And it's exhausting.
Oh gosh.
It's exhausting. And, you know, even for people that kind of come up with negative comments when actually, so I'll take the funeral. I'll take it as an example. The Queen's funeral. It's really easy to focus in on it, you know, and spend your time focusing on, is somebody out of step, or, you know, did they do the turn, anything like that, rather than looking at the whole system and going, my God, what an amazing accomplishment was achieved in 10 days, and the largest event globally, you know, for people to nitpick on the negativity. And it's like, you know, seriously, just give, you know, acknowledge the accomplishments that people have and focus on the positives that can be gained from a situation, rather than labeling and laboring on the negativity. And I think it all comes back to our mindset, doesn't it? Is that we naturally, as a human species, just from an evolutionary perspective, we default to a negative mindset because that's necessary for our survival. And when you surround yourself with people who are in a kind of survival mode, they're surviving and not thriving in their ecosystem of life, because we all experience a different life, then they are naturally, when we connect, going to suck energy out of your ecosystem, and pull you down. And it's important that we put those barriers up to know, okay, this is me and my energy, and you are entitled to your energy level, and if it's low, but don't make it my responsibility.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said it.
To sort your energy level out, because that's your responsibility to own. And it's the same, you know, when I'll go back to the funeral because it's an easy thing to. I was really sad about the funeral, and my daughter Lily came and gave me huge hugs and asked me why I'm sad, and I tried to explain it to her, but it was my responsibility to lift myself out of the sadness. She was super helpful in that process, but she wasn't going to let my sadness influence her emotions.
Right.
You know, she actually disconnected from the funeral and went and played in the other room so she could have fun. And that's what we need to do as individuals, is, you know, do you know, this is, you know, here's my boundary. And here's where I've reached my limit. I'm not going to give my emotion away to you, because you can't generate it yourself to the point that I'm going to deplete my emotional tank. Right.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. It happens every time. Like, there's not enough time in a recording or a live stream. It's not enough time when we have conversations. There's so many different angles there, and I want the listeners to really grasp this. If you're a person that you feel that you're pouring into everybody else and you're not getting enough back to be able to replenish or recycle energy, creating boundaries is probably the deciding factor of you living a fulfilled life. Because if you are not aware of that type of stuff, what you're doing, you're just pouring everything into everybody else. Here's where I suffered, Dr. Ruth, and I want to make sure these listeners understand this. Where I suffered is I poured myself into my businesses and poured myself into my career because I wasn't getting anything else from the external. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where I got a lot of fulfillment from, is helping people. And the systems I would create, educational systems, and the processes that I would put in place. I could see it instantaneous, the effect that I would have on others of changing their lives. So that's where I would pour all my energy into. And the reason why
you get feedback.
100%. But
so you get positive feedback.
Yes.
And so of course you're going to do it because you're getting some feedback loop. You know,
100%. I mean, it was instantaneous, you know, when I make a shift in a business, and then people don't understand about a lot of things when it comes to business, real business. When you have different type of structures and distribution channels and different type of things in place, and you have a vision, and what I envision, you're not going to see, but it's not your job to see it. It's my vision. It's my story. It's my vision, right? It's mine. So when someone tells you that you can't do something, I'm going to make you eat that word. But when I put a system in place and I make a small little finite move, right? And then that finite move ends up making a massive impact. That brings me a lot of fulfillment. Okay.
Yeah.
So in personal relationships, and the reason I want to scale it back, in personal relationships where I really failed, when I would shut off in personal relationships, or it could be just a friend, when you aren't giving me what I feel that I should be reciprocated of the type of level of energy and effort, then I shut off and I'll just go pour my energy into things that obviously bring me satisfaction and joy.
Yeah.
But my problem is I become very resentful.
Okay.
You know,
so I mean, that's your emotion to own from a resentment perspective, because you know we can spend. We think about, we've got a garden, and
I like this analogy,
we can pour all of our energy into feeding the plants that are going to make our garden look beautiful, or we can pour all of our energy into focusing on weeding our garden and getting rid of the bugs. One is going to bring you a lot of satisfaction, and one it might bring you some irritation. And it could be different for both people. So if we're not taking the time to manage the garden,
right,
and not let the weeds come into the garden in the first place, then of course we're going to spend a lot of time weeding and less time tending to the beauty, and appreciating the beauty of the garden that we have, or the beauty that we can create within our garden. And so it's important that we just acknowledge some people are just not going to serve us.
Right.
And that's okay, because they're not going to serve you. You can't make them serve you.
No, because you try to force anything in this world, it's not going to work out in your favor. It's not. And
you just got to say, do you know what? And it could be family members that are not serving you, or your immediate relationship with your other half is not serving you at the level that you need to be served to feel fulfilled, and fulfilled is fully full.
Right.
And so they could be serving part of you. So I like to think, when we talk about becoming a well-being warrior, it's about looking at your emotional well-being, it's about looking at your physical well-being, it's looking at your mental well-being and your spiritual well-being. And often people miss out one of those 4 quadrants when they look at the whole person. And so someone could be fulfilling you emotionally, but not fulfilling you mentally. So you could have like loads of emotional stimulus, but nothing cognitively, nothing that's really lighting you up inside in terms of an intellectual stimulus, conversation and so on. They're not on the same wavelength. Is often how we talk about it. Or they could be stimulating you physically, and you have great relationships sexually, for example, but actually spiritually you're totally misaligned in terms of your core values and beliefs. So you've got to look at, what do you want out of life on those 4 quadrants: emotionally, physically, mentally and spiritually, and is your friendship circle, or your circle of connections, for filling those buckets up? Because if they're not, then it's incumbent upon you to take action and do something about it, not incumbent upon the person to change how they're behaving. to suit your needs, because that's just a recipe for friction and
you're not
disaster. It's incumbent on you to go and find the right people.
Right. Well, then also just being aware of the fact that what you do need, right? Most people don't know how to articulate what they really want from a relationship, any ship. Okay.
No.
But when kind of ties back into the type of person you are, whether you said that your brain, you obviously wavelength, you think faster than most people. I suffer from that. One of my core needs in any relationship, I have to hold an intellectual conversation with you, and I have to feel, the key word here is feel that we can withstand that type of frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? To recycle.
Yeah.
But if and that's what I feel that, and I don't want to talk about obviously with a spouse, but I guess it is that way. When I'm like obviously mentally engaged with the other person, I'm more romantic, more, whatever.
Yeah.
And all that, because I'm able to do more, because I'm getting something.
Yeah. Because you need that mental stimulus. So mental connection for you is really important.
Yes.
And that's okay. But for some people, it might not be important at all.
Too much. Yeah. They'd be like, I don't want to talk.
Yeah, they might not want that stimulus mentally. They might prefer to, spiritual connection might be more important, emotional connect, so we all have different levels of importance in terms of how we want to connect. But until we take the time to truly understand it, I have, a worksheet on this and a questionnaire on this part of the coaching I do. Until we understand what it is we really need and what we really want and what our priorities are, and what we're getting,
mm-hmm.
we don't really have that visibility to know what we need to change and what we're empowered to change in that process. So, it's not complicated to do the work, but you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
to understand what you want.
Why do you feel that most people don't want to put in that work when it comes to their brain health, or even coming to understanding how they tick and what they need? And I know that's some of the things you obviously do with your one-on-one coaching and inhibiting, and we'll talk all about this. If someone say, let's create a scenario, this be easier for the listeners. Say I'm a person and I don't know you, and I don't understand what the problem is. And I see a lot of that with people that they don't even know what the problem is. They just know they feel like shit.
Yeah.
And I'm just in despair. Right. What is your first step with that type of client or that type of person where they're just at loss? They don't know how to articulate their emotions. They want to feel good in relationships, or they feel like they're self-sabotaging, whatever that might be for someone. Mm-hmm. What do you typically do with your clients in that type of situation?
So typically people start in the program, if we're doing one-on-one coaching. Mm-hmm. So we start in they start with the Brain Power Performance Accelerator program, and that's really, we look at your 5 pillars of brain health, and it's okay, whatever start state people are at is totally okay. But people will get an assessment on the 5 pillars, which is their feelings, their actions, their connections, their thoughts and surroundings. And they'll rate themselves in those 5 pillar areas. And then we'll dial in on each of the pillars, because they're all interconnected, to make sure that they elevate themselves and they learn the right tools and techniques to check in with their feelings, to understand their actions, to understand how they connect with themselves and others, to understand their thoughts and understand how their surroundings are influencing them. So that's the facts. We say, let's look at the facts. So that's where we first start, and then we build on that. But they're the kind of fundamentals, and that applies for children. I take children through this program at a very basic level. They look at the facts, all the way through to people who would like to be children at the latter end of their years. So that's where we start, and it's okay to struggle in any of those areas. It's okay to feel shit. It's okay to not really know where those feelings are coming from, because nobody gets taught this in school. Nobody gets taught how to feel or how to articulate their feelings. Nobody gets taught about brain health in general, and the fact that our brain runs everything. in our body. It's like our central computer.
It's like a beautiful little organ inside your head, and you're not left with what you have. You can get it better. You can get better.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's this, it's like a muscle. We have to use it, and we have to work it, and we have to look after it. I like to think of it as it's like your engine of life. And nobody talks about, you know, if we've got a super racing car, there's three aspects to a race car. Some cars don't like to come out of the garage because they're afraid of what people might think of them. They might, maybe they're worried about the body color, or they haven't got the right logos on, or whatever, or is it the right shape, and so on. So that's the first bit. So it's about unchaining your pain, so you get this amazing supercar out of the garage. Then you've got the training of the people that drive the supercar, which is typical coaching, where you teach people how to navigate their way through life. But then you've got the engine. So and the coaching that I do is looking at all of these aspects as the engine of the supercar, and that's your brain. And in understanding what fuels your brain, what is the right fuel to put in it. So don't put diesel, or don't put petrol in a diesel engine like my husband did when we went on a journey in our camper van. Big disaster. But we never think.
Where were you at?
We were on the Channel Tunnel. Do
you realize that well, I don't know how it is here, but I have a driver, but his driver puts gas in it, but petrol. But in the States, the diesel ones have a bigger nozzle. You can't fit it in the hole, you know?
So diesel has a bigger nozzle, so you can't
put I didn't know if it was that way.
In a petrol, but you can put petrol in diesel.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, got it. Okay.
So yeah, so we were lining up to go on the Channel Tunnel, and I said to my husband, you know, the camper van was behaving really oddly. I go,
yeah, I was like, what's going on?
And I said, are you sure you put the right fuel in? Because we fueled up just before we got on. Yeah, I have. And I had to phone the petrol station to check what he put in, and of course he put petrol and diesel, but by that point we were committed in the queue. So we got ourselves onto the tunnel, but then we had to be had a recovery vehicle to tow us off at the other end, like the humiliation.
Oh man, I'm sorry, Dave,
and then we had to stay overnight and have it all flushed out. But you can't, you know, you don't go and get a flush out of your brain when you put the wrong stuff in it.
You can numb the problems, and ignoring the problems, like most people, right, is ignoring it. And avoidance is big for people.
Absolutely. And this comes back to the acceptance piece, is accepting, you know, people don't want to accept that they're making the wrong choices in life. And you know, you can't, how do I help people is, you know, why you mentioned earlier, why do people not want to do the work? Well, often what's happened in society and culture in the sort of last 50, 70 years is people have been promised a pill to fix the problem. So what's happened is the companies that develop these pills are taking power away from people. And we have an awful lot of agency and power over our health and well-being. And slowly but surely it's being eroded. And the key thing for me is to give people back that power and control that they always had. We always had it. But someone somewhere, including all the adverts and all the, you know, the misinformation that's been
what's horrible in the States, it's even worse. Yeah, it's even worse in the States.
Oh, it's just ridiculous, and governments get involved as well. So they, you know, people try and trust the government, but it turns out that they're, you know, they're in bed with the companies that really are the worst killers in the context of people's health and well-being. It's really important that we provide the right education and empower the people, and then the people have the power to change the status quo. But it requires work. You know, it requires work to change your standard operating system and how you've been educated as to what's okay and what's not okay. And you know, so much misinformation, like the low-fat diets, like just total nonsense, you know, based on scientific evidence that was completely flawed. The information around how fat is so bad for you, certain types of fat, for sure trans fats, But what happened there in the low-fat diet is they got rid of all the fat and they chucked in sugar, and actually it's sugar that's the problem. It was never the fat in the first place. And so it's about educating people with the right information, and allowing people to make informed choices. Yes, people are going to make the wrong decisions
all the time,
but, yeah. And that's their right to choose. But we need to give people more informed choices about how much power they have and how much power is given away. If we think about medication, or principally medication, it deals with symptoms, and the way that medicine has evolved, it evolved from looking at the whole person. Hundreds of years ago, you'd look at the whole person and you'd have a family doctor, or you'd have a healer who would understand you as a person. Now medicine looks at you as a series of symptoms. It doesn't look at the whole of you. It just looks at a symptom. So they never tend to ask you, how are you feeling?
That's the last question.
Okay, what's going on in your life at the moment? They just look at the symptom and then they deal with the symptom, but they never really deal with it because it's not the root cause. So they put a band-aid over a gaping wound, but the root cause still remains. So you end up naturally, because this is about making money with the companies, many of the companies that make medicines, is why would you want to help people get better?
Yeah, why? I mean, they're going to feed their pockets.
When they're sick.
Right. I mean, it's keeping them sick. I mean, even you're looking at some forms of, obviously, the entertainment in the world is keeping you sick. It's where you see in the States, I mean, I know it's obviously here too, but you don't see a lot of liquor stores on the high streets. See a lot of liquor stores in obviously areas where there's not really that prominent, right? So it's suppression. Okay. Once you kind of have an understanding on how the world really works, you start to detach yourself from their way of thinking, because you now can see the motive.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes me so passionate about your show and what you talk about. You're talking about a whole different way of someone looking at a situation. Because I know when my sister passed away, my mom obviously was struggling. It just gave her a pill, depression pill. That doesn't work. Just because.
No, I mean, they did the same to my mum when she, when she was in a really difficult place when my dad passed away, as many people are, and she was feeling suicidal, and her father committed suicide. So we had to do a quick, very rapid intervention, which I phoned the doctor and said, could you get her on some antidepressants? Wasn't my preferred choice, but fortunately I was able to help her we got her off them like super quick, because I didn't agree with her anyway. And now she takes saffron, which is way better than an antidepressant, and not omega-3 to help manage her mood. There's much better ways in which to approach helping people through grief than perhaps just a single pill can do for people. And I'm not saying don't prescribe medication. Really important.
Yes. I think people understand.
It just shouldn't be the first choice. People need to think about, how can we look at a blended fix for this person that's going to not just help them now, but help them long term. And people forget about the long term issue, and often the immediate help. Same with like eating ice cream. Might feel great in the moment, catastrophic long term if you eat that every day. So it's really looking at helping ourselves now and later, and finding the right solution for that person, not just for the symptom.
And thank you for giving the listeners a little bit more context and making sure they understand it's okay if that is what you're supposed to be prescribed, not the first option. And your prior military, as much, with myself, we had that in common. A lot of my friends have came back from the military, not in good situations. They've come back with all their limbs and stuff, but not good mentally. And some of them are no longer with us, even after they got out in the military. And it's something I'm very passionate about, is the Wounded Warrior Project in the States that I give to, but people don't understand the levels of trauma of, you know, when they go post-traumatic stress or whatever that situation might be. And if they go to the VA or they go, you know, Veterans Affairs, they go to there to get help. They don't even have, they would obviously require meds, but they can't even give them meds because obviously an insurance or whatever that might be.
Mhm.
And it's a long waiting list for this. And then they seek out other ways to numb pain.
Yeah, and it's completely understandable that people seek alcohol, which is the natural go-to to
Drugs,
numb pain, drugs, chronic eating. You know, that people we naturally reach for the sugar stuff. I did this myself. I would numb the pain from having a miscarriage and then told by the firm I had no emotional intelligence by eating copious quantities of ice cream and drinking in the evening half a bottle of wine pretty much every night, which is absolutely ridiculous in the context of my long-term health. And I put on loads of weight, which made me feel rubbish in myself. And then and it becomes this vicious cycle where you never feel enough. So you just you keep looking for this escape from pain, and the escape you choose just never is enough to get, and it creates more pain.
You don't understand. Yeah.
In the process. And I completely understand people's needs to escape and to use alcohol to stop your brain going crazy, which is sometimes what it feels like it's doing. The key thing here is to pause and reflect and to engage. I would just encourage people to reach out to me because we do detailed brain health evaluations using the ALLAN clinics methodology. I have linked, you mentioned the Wounded Warrior program. Quiet Explosions is a documentary that was produced in the context of brain injury. We've got Dr. Mark Gordon coming on the show, talk about neuro hormones and how we can have changes to our hormone regulation in our brain as a consequence of blast images. And then you've got chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is in essence damage to the brain, and how the neurons connect with each other as a consequence of chronic inflammation and sometimes microbleeds in the brain, which can cause huge problems in people and rages and anger and all sorts, because their brain is massively inflamed as a result of blast injuries or emotional trauma, all sorts of reasons. And so there's ways and means in which you can regulate your neurohormones. So we develop hormones in our brain, which is different to endocrinology, which is just the generic hormones that we create in our body. But we have a endocrine system in our brain which generates hormones. And when people experience major trauma, as military personnel often do, or those in the emergency services who are involved.
Not just the military.
And other people, if you watch Quiet Explosions, it's not just about blast injuries and things like that. You can have hormonal imbalances as a consequence of major trauma, including rape and so on. So it's really important that we don't just look at the person expressing a symptom, but we look at the detail, the blood work, the history, the layers of trauma that may have happened. And don't be dismissive of. Often I find some medical professionals are really dismissive of dips in hormone count in the blood.
Oh, really?
And it's a signal to tell you that something is wrong. It's telling you that something is not right in the system, and so we need to explore deeper and understand what's driving this hormonal dysregulation. And it could be diet, it could be a blast injury, it could be problems in terms of the cerebral spinal fluid flow. It could be all sorts of things that could be driving this dysregulation of hormones. But you can't ignore it. You can't just say, oh no, well that's within the normal range, or that's just okay. Well, just okay isn't good enough. I don't know.
People want to thrive in life, right?
I want to be optimal, and hormones drive everything. They drive our mood, they drive our behavior, they drive how we feel physically, they drive the systems in our body. you know, there's so many things that hormones are responsible for, and so we have to really pay attention to that. And coming back to your point with people who you've known in the military, is often what has happened and continues to happen to this day is people are given a pill and told to go away. That's not good enough. You know, you need to treat the person, the individual, not treat the symptom. And that's where medicine needs to get to, is the functional medicine approach, which is the approach we take through the academy, is looking at all of you and all of the indicators associated with your brain function. But we look at all of you, but through the lens of brain health, because that's how your brain runs everything.
I love that. I wish that there was more of this for, you know, people, you know, more accessible to people, but it is, you just have to know where to find it. And if you seek help, or you're seeking understanding, maybe just raising your awareness. I mean, I feel a better person, a more equipped person, just by working with you on some of the things you help me with, because I have more of an understanding. And if you understand something, then you can kind of figure out how to do it. Right. And this is why I love your approach, because like voice therapy, they'll send you to a head shrink or whatever, and I'll send you to someone to talk to, but you can talk to somebody all day long, but I still have to deal with this shit when I go home. That's how I felt about it with the doctor. That's why I loved Havening, because Havening, I'm able to deal with what I'm feeling and not ignoring what I can't articulate.
Yeah, and do you know what's great about that? And you know, there's loads of different modalities. You know, Havening is one of the many modalities that people can tap into. You got tapping as well. There's family systems. There's all sorts of systems all sorts of modalities that you can tap into that doesn't necessarily require you to talk about your experiences. And it's really important that the modern medicine and modern coaching, or future coaching, if you will, looks at the different modalities that people need in order to release trauma.
Wow.
And we get trauma gets encoded in our body in very different ways. So we have the cognitive encoding of trauma, we have the autonomic encoding of trauma, which is how how our heart rate increases and our blood pressure and sweating. And we have the somatosensory encoding, which is the sensations that get encoded as part of, you know, muscle tension and all sorts of things like that. And then we have the emotional code encoding. So cognitive encoding might benefit from talking. Autonomic encoding, not likely. Somatosensory, not likely. Emotional encoding, not so much. And so how people need to release the trauma that has been encoded in them, and often talking about it doesn't actually release it. It can make it worse.
It makes it worse because I feel like I have to explain myself,
and it's hard to talk about it. You know, when my dad died and my mum and I witnessed it, and we both had different experiences, there was absolutely no way she could talk about it because it's too traumatic. You don't want to talk about it. You just want the relief from the trauma that you witnessed. You don't have to talk about it to get relief. Havening is a great modality to do that, but like I said, there are many others, and if it doesn't work for you, I can refer you to people, you know, different therapy modalities. So it's important that people are not just shunned into this is the way to do it and there's no other way, that they take the time, because we're empowered. We're all empowered to take the time. We've got the internet to look and find the right person that is going to serve you and help you really unchain your pain, because you're not stuck with the pain you have. Our brains are incredibly powerful. You can change your memories. You can change how you want to recall your memories. You have the power to do all of that. You can rewire your brain if you choose to, but people need to be equipped with the right tools to know how they can do that.
One of the things I love about, you know, with what you do, and I love that you said, you know, find a right person that can help you. finding that right person that can help you. If you're looking for the wrong things in life, all the wrong things will show up. Okay. You'll probably, I'm a perfect example of this. Okay. You're looking for all the right things in life. You'll find it. Make it a non-negotiable for yourself. You deserve the right to be at optimal brain health. You deserve. Wouldn't you like to be able to know what it feels like to operate at a very high level and understand, and now even understanding what you're feeling and understanding what the other person's feeling. And if they don't know how to articulate, you can help them articulate what they really mean. And now you don't have this anger and frustration there. I've really dealt with a lot of situations, especially in business. And people say we have a very high emotional intelligence. Even before they knew how to coin it, I just knew how to read energy. Something's not working here. So we're having a massive issue, but if you have a high emotional charge and you have and they're pushing and they're pushing and pushing and pushing. I'm like, listen, bro, you can give off so many warnings you want to give off, but if you're not verbal or stern with your approach, then you're going to have another issue. You can't match a battering ram with another ram.
Yeah.
You have to have, everybody calm down for a second and let's figure out what's going on. And that is raising your awareness. Yeah. And I love this.
And, and I love that you said that because, when you go into conversations with people and something's off, often it's not the conversation that informs you something's off. Mm.
It's nonverbal cues.
It's the nonverbal. And we forget to think about the nonverbal cues of people with trauma. So we need to pay more attention to each other to appreciate how trauma is written into our body non-verbally. So a classic example, often I see this when people with Havening, and my mum was super example, is when we are traumatized and it's extreme trauma, it gets encoded in our face.
Oh yeah.
So our muscles tense up.
You think, right? You're a very fast thinker. So a lot of people that think at a very different wavelength, all our expressions are in our face. Yeah. All of them. And you might be a 2-minute conversation. You might see all my expressions.
Yeah. But I mean, when people have it encoded, that tense face. And when they go through Havening, as my mum did, and you obviously experienced it yourself, is you can see the tension come off that person's face when they've had a release. So like, my mum looked 10 years younger when she was able to haven the trauma associated with that experience. And I now have the cue is that I can look at my mum's face and say, Mum, is everything okay? Because she will have it written on her face. She doesn't have to tell me that she's not okay. I can see that she's not okay. So it's important, from a cultural perspective, that we spend more time connecting with people and using the 5 pillars: feelings, actions, connections, thoughts, and surroundings, to take the time to understand how people are really feeling, and to not ask the question, are you okay? Which is an okay question, but ultimately the finger gets pointed on you, and so you immediately push back. Yeah, I'm fine. Is normally the answer. But is everything okay? Because then people look outward. Oh, what's bothering? If they've got the mental capacity to, you'll start, well, this is happening and that's happening and this, and then you start getting the shopping list of micro traumas that are affecting how that person is performing. And so it's how we use language as well is really important in the context of helping people. Right.
One of the things that I learned through some really deep work, internal work of myself, is picking up some of the things that my parents would say to minimize my feelings. Or my dad walk in a room and like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me, right? Or nothing wrong. Or, oh, he's upset because of this, and they like to project what they think I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And that infuriates me. And there's a trigger. It would feel like, how are you going to tell me how I feel?
Yeah.
This is when I was a kid, like teenager, right? How are you going to tell me how I feel? I'm the only person that knows how I feel, right?
Rather than asking,
right?
Don't is everything okay? How are you feeling?
Like, not what's wrong with you. Like, so there's certain things that trigger me, and just by, I won't say coaching, but communicating, those are some triggers for me.
Yeah.
At 41 years old now, me having a conversation, I've learned how to minimize 90% of my frustration when I'm around my parents.
Yeah.
Just by sharing with them, these are some of the things that I don't like to be taught to this way.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard, isn't it? Because you don't realize that script unless you take the time to do the deep work, like you said. You don't realize that script is running in the background.
Same play over and over and over.
And it's going to trigger you. And it doesn't need to be your parents that trigger you. It could
I'm
be
just giving an
somebody in the
example.
workplace or somebody in the street that will say something to you that your parents may have said to you.
On sight.
Yeah.
There were certain people that I would walk into. I'm like, his face just irritates me. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, no, and I think this is, how people flip. Sometimes people just suddenly flip because they've had so many of these experiences that have stack. Trauma stacks.
Yes.
Okay.
It's heavy too.
And at some point, it could be anything. Will trip somebody and they think it's the person that has tripped them, but actually the lid is just blown off because of all of these layers of trauma from the past that have been going unaddressed, and the lid could blow off in often it expresses itself in a rage. If people are lucky enough to express it outwardly, or it expresses itself internally, where the body keeps score and expresses itself in terms of disease. So there's lots of evidence now that chronic diseases, including rheumatoid arthritis and cancer and so on, is a result of suppressed
emotions. Yeah. God, I wish I can go on for hours with you, and I'm be conscious of the time. This is because, I swear we should end up doing our own show. But there's so much there, and I want the listeners to really understand something here. And, when she's talking about there, I know a lot of people out there can really relate to this. Is, have you ever been around somebody that just snaps, or been around somebody it means they can't internalize anything anymore. They've hit their breaking point. But if they're aware of how their brain functions and some of their principles of what you talked about and those core values and those pillars, then you can at least start peeling back that onion and those layers and going, okay, this is what I need to put in my life. This is the kind of conversation. And then you don't have these type of issues.
Yeah.
And then
they become less.
Yeah, less. Or, obviously, less with emotional charge.
Yeah.
Because what you don't deal with will find you. I talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
And that it came to me at the worst time, where I was like, I have all this baggage. I don't have any more room underneath this rug. You know what I mean? It's got to come out. So, but then even you looked at, if you actually go back and play the video when I did havening with you, I'm like 70 pounds lighter and I look completely different. Yeah. Yeah. Great diet. But a lot of that I was holding on to in somatic markers, a lot of stuff that I was struggling with, Yeah. You don't until you start working on yourself, you don't realize how much you need to realign,
Yeah.
So I highly suggest anybody listening to this, you find Dr. Ruth. If you're watching a component that's been streaming, go to the show notes, get the links, reach out to Dr. Ruth, and she will at least point you in the right direction if she can't help you personally.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Do reach out. I'm always here. You can connect on my website, get a free consultation, or just drop me a note of things you're concerned about. Right.
And even if you don't have anything that you want to address, it's just good to get the information. That's what I would do. Just request a consultation call just to even open up the opportunity to you tapping into optimal brain health. So anyways, peace out. Much love, guys. Y'all take care. Don't do anything I would do. Be safe. Peace out, Dr. Ruth. Thank you so much. Kiss that beautiful baby for me when you get there.
I will do. Thank you for having me.
Always. Y'all take care, guys. Peace out.